Awesome. Well, let's walk our audience through that process from the beginning, yeah, building that framework as we go, talking about that seller's piece and then that going for the raise piece.
Yeah, I mean, if we start with a B2B journey, right? I mean, it's standard in that you either have to go out and generate your own leads by proactively contacting companies, and whatever you do, you find them through trade shows. We had a very close relationship with Amazon Web Services and Google, so a lot of the leads we got came through from them. But you start with the first meeting. You have to, give an introduction to the company, say a few clever things, talk about some case studies and why you're a reliable partner to work with. The customer take their time, they think it through step by step, they come back to you, have a few more meetings, you get to a point when they say, okay, you are actually someone we can work with. You start scoping out the work they're trying to do. If this, in this case, was a consulting project. And as you sit down, you understand their requirements, what kind of help do they need, and should we own it, should they own it, etc. You get to the point of making a proposal, and the proposal goes out, they review it, they have a few back and forth on that, and so on. And then eventually they come back and say, yeah, all good, budget signed off, we understand the scope, we like it. You sign a framework services agreement, you send that across, you negotiate that back and forth. And we had one company here in the UK as an example. We had, I think it was 37 or 38 terms on the contract. There's a lot of back and forth. And attached to the contract was an SOW, or an order form, we called it, that set out the detail of the services. And eventually we came to a point of an agreement. And at that stage, you send it out via DocuSign or whatever, and everyone signs off and you move into execution mode. I mean, that's the classic enterprise sales process, right? And if you take that and you think, okay, that's pretty obvious. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm out there, I'm selling stuff, that's what we do. And you start thinking, okay, how do I get hold of these investors, and what would they speak to us? In our case, we engaged an investment banker who helped us kind of prepare the pitch deck, but in the language that investors understand. I mean, you today, if you're a company, you have a pitch deck that you take to the first meeting with a new client to try and showcase what you can do. We did the same thing, talk about the industry, the company, etc. I'm sure a few people have seen the pitch deck. And once you have that, you go to the investor. In this case, the investment banker were the lead generation house for us, right? So they arranged the meetings with 20, 25 different investors. And yeah, in the same way, you turn up on the day, you tell the stories, you go through the pitch deck. And from the first meeting, yes, it's always different in that you're trying to get someone to pay money for your company and so on. But like a customer will look at you and think, can I work with you? Is there a level of trust here? Can we build a relationship that goes kind of beyond the day we sign the contract? So in that sense, it's exactly the same. And you go through it, you speak to a bunch of them. Some of these leads, like in the B2B sales world, will go away. They only ever became leads. They never really moved to the next stage. You get to the next stage, you go into more detail, like you would with a client, and you go into different parts of your business. How is it structured? Who do you employ? The same thing will happen on the B2B sales side. They will ask, who do you employ? Who's going to run the project for me? So literally every step of the way is the same. Now when you come to a B2B sales motion, you would at some point get to a point where a proposal goes out, where you kind of sit down some detail. It's a somewhat legally binding document, a proposal in most cases. You can't quite say what you like in there. And there's a reasonable level of detail in terms of scope. And the equivalent in the investment world for me would be the term sheet, right? A term sheet is not that legally binding, but it gives you a level of detail in terms of how the relationship would work and what we're exchanging money for once we get to the point of signing the contract. So again, you have proposal on one side, term sheet on the other. It's essentially the same thing. And then you get through what could be a lengthy legal negotiation, because once the term sheet is signed, like a proposal is being agreed, rather than on the B2B selling side, you will send out SOWs and framework services agreement. Here you have a shareholders agreement, you have a share purchase agreement, different terminology, same thing. And you go through that. It could be 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks, lots of back and forth with legal teams, nailing down all the details that, of course, sets out the relationship beyond the point of signing. But when you look back at it, the lawyers might be different. You don't have contract lawyers, you have corporate lawyers. and so on and so forth. But you can really map this all the way. And I guess my main point is that when, if you're an entrepreneur, you're out there, you're very comfortable in what you're doing, you're running your business, you're growing your business, you have a lot of interaction with customers and everything, and you wander into a world which you feel is very unknown to you, people shouldn't be hesitant or scared, so to speak, and think, oh, this is something I'm so unfamiliar with. The only thing that changes is, rather than selling your company's products and services to a customer, an enterprise, you're selling your company's shares to an investor. And that's essentially it. Otherwise, I'd say more or less the same.